I turned the levels of my dark fantasy platformer Tower to God from this to that, while staying true to the minimalistic pixel style. And in this video, I show you step by step how I did it. By the way, I'm Saif, an indie game dev, and I'm using Godot for development. I already have everything on the gameplay layer, so let's add more now. Create atmosphere and get started right away with step 1. Adding more assets on the gameplay layer. Actually, there is one thing I want to begin with, and this is copying the hex code from the tile sets of the modulation property of a former level. And then I type in ground and go to the tile map layer, go for modulate, it's under visibility, and then I can paste the hex code. Then it's the old golden grass and more brown ground, which I think is a lot more fitting here. Something dark but still saturated is important, especially where the player is landing or can interact with. So the player really does know where the parts in the level are, which are to interact or which are interactable, or where the player can land on. This is really important, so that's why I have this high contrast in the grass from the ground to make it really obvious for the player. And I think it already looks a lot better. In the same tile set, I have some ground assets, and I'm just like placing it kind of randomly here, the foliage and some rocks. I have 3 variations of grass and the same rock but mirrored, and I'm just really placing them randomly, just how I am in the mood. This of course takes some time, and I'm skipping here now. Yeah, and here's something special. I have these kind of golden flowers, and they kind of lead the way towards a collectible that is hidden in the level. So whenever a collectible is near, you should look for these flowers. They will lead you. And I thought, why not add more trees? These trees also serve as one-sided platform in some areas, but they also make a good decoration. Actually, the design of the trees is inspired by some 3D printer poo or supports I had when printing some miniatures. So I kind of like this strange T shape they form. And they are also minimalistic and really fit the minimalistic pixel style I'm searching for here. And then let's move on to an element that I think is really important. It's reactive grass. So when the player walks through it, it kind of bends. Yeah, it reacts to the player, and I think it's important to add some of these elements that like do nothing for the gameplay, but they add a lot of feel, I think. Yeah, and for the last thing of step 1, I just filled up the ground. So there are no strange empty spaces here anymore. We can continue with the second step, tileset background. A cave background placed directly behind the gameplay layer adds another level of depth. It also adds a touch of realism, well, for a dark fantasy minimalistic pixel platformer. But yeah, individual platforms or tiles that previously seemed to float in midair are now part of a solid background. Oh, and there's one thing I almost forgot. I had these animated tile set here. It looks really like dancing ketchup, but actually it should be a blood ocean, which has some waves and is threatening. So in the first level I used a shader for that, and I think it's a lot more appealing. So I just copied it over and replaced the animated tiles with these blood pools. First, moving on with step 3, foreground tileset layer. So we're always looking for more ways to fake a 3D approach. with a side scroller. So that's why I adding here another foreground ground layer, which will use the same tile set as the gameplay layer. And there it is. So my task here is just to paint within the empty but filled spaces of the ground layer, like so. And yes, I know how to use auto tiling, but this is just for an example here. It is everything filled. And of course, later on, I will also go and use the modulate property to like fit it the style I'm already going for. And let's start the scene here. And there it is on two parts here visible at the start directly. Step 4, adding a parallax foreground. So I have this one here already in 1 levels before. A parallax is moving with the player. That's a layer that's moving with the player. And it's relatively easy because there's a node for it in Godot. I just painted it, modulated it, and there it is, whatever it is. Step 5, details and VFX. Yeah, details, that's great. Really vague, right? I just used it for ivy here. I thought we are in this level in a kind of forest area, so why not have moss or something like that? And I also added these falling leaves VFX. Yeah, I really like it. It adds a lot of mood. The last and final step, parallax background layer and a canvas layer shader. Actually, these are 2 steps, but I think they are adding the real magic, so that's why they're combined here. What I built was a shader on a canvas layer, which has some really cool properties. I have like a wash strength to make the look washed out, a desaturate amount, a shadow lift, some tint colors, a fog, and also some vignette to add some dramatic focus. And also build a whole background scene with many parallax layers. And you can just from the scene control all the colors in different tints, and there's also the tower that you have to reach in the background. And let's now see everything in action, compared side by side. Yeah, let's go. Yeah, as you can see, I think especially when the background is finally there, and the leaves and stuff like that, this is creating atmosphere. It's really making it look everything way more interesting. I also changed the NPC interaction, so there's a lot more VFX, there's text, and also some poetry, but that's something for another video. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little trip into good-looking platformer levels. See you soon. Bye.